Hello, everyone. We're back here at the Breaking the Guard podcast. Today, we got a very special guest, two-time UFC heavyweight champion of the world, good friend of ours, Frank Mir. Frank?
Okay. It's good to be here, man. Sorry for the run late.
Yeah.
It's all good. You're Cuban. It comes with the territory, right?
Cuban time.
Yeah.
Payback for yesterday for him being late.
Yeah. No, we totally get it, bro. Frank, I mean, we were talking about where we're going to go with this podcast, and there's so many different directions we can take. I'm not sure. I guess we could start with, your early career in the UFC as one of the most dominant jiu-jitsu guys in there. However, you were beating guys that on paper much better than you.
Oh, yeah.
In jiu-jitsu, right? And you
I was brought in
on paper,
to lose, yeah.
Exactly. And you're always the guy that always shocks the world with like, I'm gonna not only win, I'm gonna make you tap.
Yeah.
Right? I think Roberto Traven was one, and then
I remember that fight clearly.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, that not only did you submit people, it's always the most brutal. I don't think there's anybody that has more breaking power than you have shown in the UFC.
I got a good story about that.
Yeah, because every time I've seen an armbar, Kimura, or whatnot, it's always nasty. I'm like, Frank's the last guy I want cranking me on any submission possible.
You guys remember that? I think it was the History Channel that we did that special for. It was the Discovery Channel. And they have the little dummy with like the mechanical
science,
joint, Fight Science.
Oh, okay.
So we did one, and they wanted to measure Frank's like power with the armbar, right? So they had a little mechanical dummy with like a metal joint, right? And he's armbarring. They're measuring how strong his armbar is, right? He breaks the dummy. He breaks the joint. Remember that? Yeah. And everyone's like, "Holy shit!"
Well, no, because I was cranking it, and then I stopped, and they can read on the measure. They're like, "Oh, because of torque."
Yeah.
They're like, "Well, is it hurting you? Why are you shutting down?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't want to break it."
Yeah.
They're like, "Dude, this is like $180,000 crash test dummy." Yeah. Like almost like come on, kid, you can't break it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. They said I can go full blast. All right, go.
That's awesome.
No, and I mean, I've trained with Frank. It's scary. Like I always tell people, you're gonna train with Frank, you gotta tap preemptively, like way before he actually gets it, because there's not a lot of time. Because you're a very powerful guy. You can twerk from 0 to 100 faster than anyone else I know. And I think that's always been like one of those things where people, they're safer. It would be safe with me or Dave, so they're used to train with people that don't have that kind of power, and you're like, I'm good. And then you go and you're surprised with like something that it's more. There's more power than they would normally expect from most people.
And I think too, mentally, I've always been very enamored with submissions, because I always felt like for hand-to-hand combat, they were the most complete way to devastate somebody. Because I came from a striking background. My dad owned Kempo karate gyms and stuff, and I've seen what hitting people is almost kind of like hitting a baseball. There's a lot of art behind it too. It's not so much a science. We're like, well, everybody you hit them here, they fall down. There's some people you hit them there and they just smile at you. You're like, well, shit, that didn't work. Where the submissions and stuff, I'm like, oh. I never look at it as a way of making a person tap, but to my mind, if I destroyed your shoulder, if the fight continues on, you have one less joint that's operating to be able to fight me off to eventually get to your neck. Because I've always felt that, like, well, there's nobody in the world that I've ever met in all my years of experience that you could put in a choke and they just sit there and smile at you. Like, all right, it doesn't work on me. Everybody needs blood to the brain, and when it ceases, they fall asleep. So that's why I've always been enamored with and drawn to submission fighting, jiu-jitsu specifically, because it's like, well, it's the most complete way for one man without a weapon to fight another man without a weapon, and it's
completely control it.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you can. I always like how Jigaro Kano said, like Randori, right? Because you could practice the same move harmlessly, and the timing and everything is on it. It's going to be the same as you practice the lethal move. How many times you meet guys that tell you, like, well, I would just poke you in the eye. I'm all right, well, how many times have you practiced that?
Yeah.
Like, if we're in a fight and your adrenaline dumps, shit hits the fan, and you're going to pull this maneuver off that you've never trained before.
Yeah.
Well, I know how to hit a single and take you down and pass your guard and put you in a head and arm. I've trained that thousands of times against guys that aren't willingly allowing me to want me to take them down and choke them. Yeah. So that's why I'm like, oh, it's a much more complete form of martial arts, because of the fact that you can actually train it. And now it becomes either a harmless move where you let somebody go, or, in a situation's life or death, it's the most proficient way I know how to end someone's life.
Yeah. Like, I've known you for a long time, Frank, and you always say stuff like, you always make analogies, like, what's the easiest way to get something done, the most intelligent way possible? Because you're known as a very powerful, strong guy. What I think the side of you that people don't get is how much of a brainiac you are as well when it comes to fighting, which I actually think is your biggest asset. It's not even the fact you're exceptionally gifted and like, you know, powerful is the fact that you are always looking at like, what's the easiest way to solve this problem, which is my definition of technique. My definition of technique is anything that minimizes effort, maximizes outcome.
Yep.
Right? Talk a little bit about that and like how did that mindset develop over time, and because you are very tactical and strategical when you plan a fight and when you prepare in general.
Well, I just looked at it this way. Everybody likes to tout that, you know, the humans were the top of the food chain. You know, we're the number one animal in the kingdom. Most dangerous. You know, every time like people make those things like, oh, the most dangerous animal. It's just human. And if you look at us, we're hairless, we're clawless, we're toothless. We're not very intimidating. You know? You lock me in a cage with a chimpanzee, and he's gonna own me. You know what I mean? But then I'm like, well, how come the chimp's in the cage? Why is it that I'm able to, you know, our humans are able to put tigers and lions and bears and imprison all those? It's like, well, it's because of our brain. Our ability to use tactics and strategy and to hack things and to find the easiest route to accomplish the most. So that's why, like, really early on in my life, I'm like, all right, I am physically stronger and faster than most people, but I'm still not on a scale of other animals. Really, that's not that impressive. If all I ever do is work my biceps, it's like, well, they're still never going to be that impressive. A human at peak performance is still not really that impressive of an animal. Yeah. But a human who knows how to use leverage and mindset and strategy and tactics, well, now we are the top of everything. You know, like, so that's why I've always influenced and tried to driven that more. It was a story my dad one time told me, because my dad's huge into Zen, so I like a lot of the philosophy. It was about these two samurais, right? And they're like, hey, you know what, you go west, I'll go east, and you know, and we'll come back here in 20 years. That way we can learn 40 years worth of knowledge, because you'll learn everything there's learned to the west of here, and I'll learn everything there's learned to the east of here, and we'll come back. Well, you know, 20 years later, they meet at the edge of the bank, and they notice that there's been heavy rainfall, so it's very swollen. And where they got to meet is on the other side. Well, the one samurai spent his whole life training physically to be fit and strong, and he has these powerful legs, and he jumps 20 feet across the river. Well, the other samurai goes and pays a nickel for the ferry to take him down. And that was the story. It's like, you basically spent your life attaining something that I can buy for a nickel. Yeah. You know, so the strategy there then shows how the other samurai, so I always wanted to be the second guy. Yeah. The guy that was always the smart guy. I go, okay, well, there's the hard way to do it, or there could be the easier way to hack the system. You know? And
I remember like an episode we filmed a while ago with Kit Dale, and he says something similar about a study that someone had made where people were spending 80% of the time to get 20% of results, where efficient people would spend 20% of their time and getting like 80% more. 100%. I can't remember the exact math of how it went out, but like it was something that, and I find myself, and it resonated with me, because I feel like a lot of times I waste my time doing things that, like, this is not really getting me anywhere. And like sometimes I'll do like this much, and they'll have huge results from it.
Yeah, that's why they say in engineering, if you want to solve a difficult problem, give it to a lazy guy, because a lazy person is going to find the easiest way to do it.
I always make a joke to my wife when she sits there, this, and I'm like, I'm just lazy. The joke I make is like, do you think that it wasn't a lazy guy that invented the wheel? You know, like, there's got to be an easier way to do this.
100%. People were carrying the stuff around. Probably right. Like some
fit guy was yoked up, like, nah, man, we're going to carry it. And the lazy's like, fuck this, man. Let's, we make this thing round. We can drag it. We'll take twice as much stuff, twice as easy. Yeah.
And in a way, like, I think fighting is like that. Like, you're meant to look at find the easy ways. Because I consider myself to be lazy in a good way. Like, I'm like you, like, I'm trying to minimize effort. So a lot of times, like, for example, like, I teach this takedown off the wall. You guys see me teach it. Or I could hit a knee or two on the wall, off a hook, right? And every wrestler I know is like, that's wrong. You should not be there. I'm like, well, you got both your feet on the wall. You can't sprawl on me. And instead of picking you up or like fighting your hips, all I got to do is take a step back and pull your feet out. And it's effortless, right? And it takes a while for people to go, like, because you're breaking tradition, you're not supposed to hit two knees. You know, but I think that this is such an underrated aspect of fighting, where we ought to be looking for the easiest route, not necessarily the traditional route.
Yeah. Well, that's why I don't like taking away, like, I'm not a fan of watching people who use kind of like the Greg Jackson style of fighting, where you're just point fighting, you know, learning how to pin a guy against a cage, take him down, eat up the clock, and win a decision by the judges, right? But at the same time, I feel like the onus is on the organization to make rules to where that can't happen. Because you can't tell people you can't find the weaknesses in the system because that's what humans inherently what we do.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like you've seen it. I remember Rob and I didn't agree, and now I'm actually on Rob's side with it. When submission only first came out, I was like, oh, this is the answer to people who just point fight, who just, you know, they'll do one half a sweep and sit there and hold you down, and now they win by advantage. I'm all that's killing mixed martial arts. Jiu-jitsu, like that doesn't apply to real fighting. So you could be a world champion here, but it's not going to apply over here because you're not really going for finishes. You're not going. And then Rob's like, well, no, you're going to take away position. And then sure enough, he's right. Now I see guys, the submission only stuff, it could be as far from a real fight as possible. I'm like, well, you're never really going to pull onto your ribs and just slide across the mat and only attack feet. I'm all, oh, well, shit. There you go. You're right. Humans are always trying to find and hack the system. And I like that attribute that we have. It's just trying to like, okay, it's not about, you know, like if I put on a jiu-jitsu tournament, I'm not mad if you figure out how to hack the rules.
Yeah, it's on the promoter to make better rules.
It's on you to make better rules to avoid that from happening because humans are always going to look for the loophole.
You know, we were talking about this podcast a while ago, but like it's such a great point because as a competitor, there are things about IBJJF rules that I hated. Like this makes no sense. This is a loophole in the rules. Now, when I competed, did I use that to win? Of course I did. It sounds like you're a hypocrite. Like, no, I'm not a hypocrite. Like, there's two sides to Robert. There's a side of Robert that wants to see the best rule possible, and there's a competitor that just wants to win.
Yeah,
there's no contradiction when you really think about it. It's like you probably exploit, you know, tax loopholes. You may disagree with them, but do you people use them? Who doesn't? You know, like if I can get away with this, why it's legal? I'm not doing anything wrong. So you're right. Like it's always like this is why to me that the structuring of the rules is such a fundamental aspect of what direction the sport is going to take.
Well, and that mentality is actually how I am too, even when it doesn't benefit me. I see it. Like when Trump came out and they're like, oh, the guy keeps declaring bankruptcy with his businesses on a business level, and you know he goes and buys back the hotels. He basically screws over the banks, you know. And then with his taxes, you know, the guy barely pays any taxes because he knows how to manipulate the system. And everybody's like, oh, he's an asshole for doing it. I'm all, that's not what I see. I see that, hey, the guy's smart enough to you know what I mean? Like, you put the system of rules there, and you're going to tell me that he's supposed to go on Scouts Honor? Like, well, I'm not going to take advantage of it that everybody else is. To me, it's like, well, fix the system. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, the system is fucked up. That make it to where guys like Trump can't do what he's doing, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and it's, you know, like you said, you have to play the rules as they are. If you're mad about them, don't blame the player. Play the game, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and speaking of rules, where would you see, what would you change? I mean, would you change anything about MMA and how it is structured? Because once again, the technique, the rules determine the direction the techniques will develop towards. They're always going to develop within that lane that the rules allow for, and we're always going to be on the verge of like what is allowed. But that's where development is going to come from, right? Within what the lanes that the rules create. How would you change these lanes? How would you change the structure of MMA?
Actually, right now, the most recent incarnation of the judging system, I actually kind of like, because they say let's go over effective damage over position, right? And I agree with, because to me it's like, look, if you take someone down and you mount them and you just sit there and hold them down, that's not really winning a fight. You know what I mean? Like, yes, you're in position. Technically, you've done all the work to go ahead and inflict damage, but if you miss that one component, then it's pointless. And the reason why I think that's a good idea is because so many guys now, because they're always looking for loopholes in the system. Previously in the past, the UFC became almost like a wrestling takedown competition. Yeah. You took someone down, you could sit there. I mean, I'd watch fights where a guy would get beat up for 4 minutes, and even the fans started thinking that that's how it should be. And then one guy would blast him with a double, take him down, get on top of him for the last 60 seconds of the fight. And he goes, oh, he won. I'm all, really? If you were watching a fight right now out in the parking lot, would you really think that the guy with his face all busted up who got a takedown won the fight? And I like submissions. I'm a proponent of submitting somebody way before I say knock them out, because I don't think knockouts are realistic in a real fight anyways, compared to submissions. But that being said, I still don't like the idea of just, well, now you're just playing the system. You're pinning a guy against the wall. You're looking, you're reading the referee. You're doing basically what Herb Dean will come over and go action, and then you'll do just enough action, but you're really not trying to win. Yeah. So I guess always trying to make the rules to where you're trying to win. I was a fan of in the past of trying to make it a point system. That's one thing that I never understood, is why we're not allowed to know what the judges are thinking in between rounds. I think having the judges score the fight during the fight, like at the end of the round, I think the judges' scorecard should go up underneath the time.
Or at least tell the coaches.
Yeah. I think that's great. And because you're going to reward action more, and you avoid, because there's a lot of people who think they're winning, and then what they do, they start coasting, right? Yeah. And like they aggressively stalling, right? Like, I'm holding you, hitting a little holding. Yeah.
I like that, aggressively stalling.
Yeah. Some people are really good at making them look like they're working hard when they're not, But I think if you're doing that, where you're actually showing score and you're putting points to things, now both fighters know exactly where they're at and who has to work harder to continue to win. And there's no ambiguity either. You know?
And that's the thing. The reason why there's ambiguity to it, right, is that judging is still subjective.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's still, did you deem that was a really hard punch, or did you think that he just made contact? So each judge is, because it's subjective, are different human beings. Yeah. So after the first round, I could sit there and go, wow, I'm punching this guy in the face, and the judge does not think I'm winning. You know what I mean? Like, you can make adjustments during the fight. Whereas afterwards, it's like, well, I can now know what that judge wanted, but how do I know
wish
that?
I knew. It's
Hindsight. So it kind of tells you. And in other sports that are subjective, they do that. Like, if you think of like bodybuilding, which is extremely subjective. In between competition, they know who's leading by points and who's doing what, because it allows them to make adjustments.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I never thought about that, but that makes a lot of sense. Or at least tell the coaches, like, hey, by the way, this round was X and X.
Well, I don't even see the element for hiding it. Yeah. I mean, like, why? I mean, most places, I mean, unless it's a betting thing, I guess, most, maybe if that's the situation, maybe cut it off, not to the fans, only the coaches know. But I never got why we can't.
Yeah, just tell people. No, I agree with you. I've worked as a judge, in fights also. I'm not sure if you guys have. There is pressure to it, but I think maybe some of it's to protect them. Because if they don't know on the spot what to say, like, there's some judges in the MMA that are notoriously terrible, and they have a reputation for it. Man, maybe they don't want to actually, if they had to score every technique, some of them, they don't even know what it is. It's easy to say 9-10. Yeah, this guy won. All right. How? Well, he was on top. Easy metric. But I think what you're saying is true, because it's going to force them to be more educated. Because they're going to have to defend, okay, why did you score this, this, and this? And they're giving, BS answers. And then it's easy, hey, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He shouldn't be a judge.
Yeah, it lifts the rock up a little bit, I think.
And which is like this is a whole podcast in itself, is like how the people are elected to become, a judge in an MMA fight. To me, blows my mind that they think that, you can't have former fighters or coaches there because they're going to be biased, and they solve the problem by bringing people that don't always have any experience.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not a solution to anything,
No, it'd be like having...
It's very common. Like,
but it would be just like you were saying. You imagine in the Olympics, and instead of having actual, like, gymnasts who used to be judges, it's just like me and you.
You get a plumber.
It's like, what the hell are we going to know?
Electrician there to make that call. And it's crazy, but that happens a lot, and I feel that is a feature of martial arts for some reason, that promoters who have either promoters or commission or people that are in charge of creating these rules, they seldom have any competition experience. And I see this a lot in the BJJ world, I see it a lot in MMA as well. The people who are in charge, if you dig, they don't have any martial arts experience. They're fans. Which is, I think it's, if you can understand the sport by watching in some ways, but the best way to create an intelligent rule set is to go to the fighters, ideally, if they're not even fighting anymore, like, hey, man, how these loopholes, like, how do we close them? Because the fighters ultimately are the ones who understand the rules best, because their livelihood depends on it. So they have to explore those rules in a way that other people just see them superficially. Like, Mike Musumeci sat right here, and he's like pointing out the loopholes in ADCC. And he goes boom, 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 and he takes it apart because he thinks like a competitor, right? But like, they never do that. They're always like, it's like a conversation they have amongst themselves, and they don't always like bring in the fighters to join into that conversation, which to me is the obvious thing to do.
I think that, we do too many things from MMA are really holdovers from boxing.
Yes.
Yeah. Carried over.
And I think that back in the day, the idea of a boxer post-career going and becoming a judge probably was almost laughable, because of the brain damage, the economic background that the boxer probably had, education-wise. But MMA is not that way now. Now you have guys that are college graduates that are, MMA fighters that are now retiring, that I think would make a much better judge. And any kind of, obviously no system's perfect. any kind of argument that if there'd be, there'd be collusion with the guys because this guy trains at that gym and you might know. I'm like, well, you just mark down and just there would have to be some onus on the individual to be like, hey, look, we're gonna have you, do the DS Masvidal fight. Like, hey, I can't judge that fight because me and Diaz, I trained at the same gym he trained. You know what I mean? So keep some kind of separation that way.
Yeah,
but,
and you have to do that anyways when you apply as a at least in Florida. You have to put as a coach or even if you're a judge, like what are your biases? Like, do you have affiliations with anybody that could be a conflict?
So we already do that. So I think they need to start pulling from a pool of guys that used to fight.
Yeah,
I wish they did that, and I think that'd be the smart thing to do in MMA and BJJ. But it's not. I guess there's like a stereotype too, and maybe you can talk a little bit this, Frank. It's a stereotype like if you're a fighter, clearly you're stupid.
Yeah.
Like that's. I mean, if you're involved in a fight business, that's not true. But the stereotype does exist. People go like, "Oh, clearly you're not very intelligent. That's why you're getting punched in the head for a living."
Well, I think MMA is because of jiu-jitsu's thrown that on its head. Back in the day, if you wanted to be a professional fighter, boxing, you specifically because it's much older, right? You usually came from a background of poverty. It was a way of overcoming, it was, like nowadays kids that come from shitty neighborhoods, they want to be rappers.
Yeah.
Well, back in the day, if you wanted to be, if you came from a shitty neighborhood and you didn't have access to an education or opportunities that maybe somebody who's more affluent had, well, then you could always fight your way out of it. Yeah. So then I think that's why it became synonymous that, well, if you are a professional fighter, then you probably aren't educated because why would anybody who had the opportunity to be a doctor or an attorney or an engineer, why would they choose to walk in and fight people? And I'm like, man, I just called fights in Tulsa where one of the competitors owns his own practice. He's a physician and he's a professional fighter. Yeah. So to me, it's like the old ideas of you're not very intelligent if you're a fighter. That guy writes prescriptions. Yeah. He's a doctor. They don't get much more, the standard of intelligence can't be much more achieved than this with that guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also, you're absolutely right about the origins of the sports. In general, a lot of sports are like that too. Football, NBA. It's like you said, it's a shot of someone who doesn't have the opportunities as someone with more wealth, but just by pure physical ability and motivation can achieve high levels of success. But I think, particularly mixed martial arts, there's so much strategy involved because you have so many weapons that it does lend to somebody who's at least tactically a smarter person, that they had to think about this. Because if you're just a knucklehead and you're just coming in there and trying to swing, you're not going to get too far.
Well, we don't see those guys anymore. If you think about it, when's the last time we saw a guy? They go, shit, he doesn't know how to fight, but man, he's such a great athlete. I don't really know of anybody that I can give that moniker to. Now, on the flip side, I can point at guys that go, well, he's not a very good athlete, but he's so technical. Damian Maia, look what he was able to do in the UFC career. Damian is not a world-class athlete. You know what I mean? Like if you sit there and go, hey, we're all going to play a game of pickup basketball, I'm probably going to pick him last. You know what I mean? Like, but the guy, knocked on the door of a title several times and had, some,
I think we consider it a successful career.
Yeah, phenomenally successful career because of his ability to understand strategy and tactics, and his mind is really what put him that far. You can't say the same on the athletic side. Yeah, you can't sit there and go, he's a pure. Well, that's why I like martial arts much more than sprinting. Is sometimes like I'm impressed with the next guy I've seen that, but a lot of that doesn't impress me anymore because I'm like, there's nothing I can ever do.
It's 90% genetics.
Yeah, you're born that way. It's like, okay, Usain Bolt and he can decide never to train another day of his life. He can lay in bed all day, and I can go and train 12 hours a day, have the best doctors, best coaches, everybody around me, and I still can't beat that guy in a race. Yeah. I could put all the effort in the world, and he could put zero effort. Yeah. So sometimes when I watch that, I'm like, to me, watching a sprint or a race or some athletic events, I'm like, basically we're just measuring who's taller. Yeah. That's all right. Well, you're taller than him. I'm like, okay, well, what did you have to do with that? Nothing.
You were born with incredible genes. Congratulations.
Yeah, did you see this marathon runner that just broke a record?
He just ran under 2 hours, right?
He ran a marathon in an hour, 59 minutes, 43 seconds, which is essentially a 4-minute, 33-second mile pace for 26.4 miles. For reference, Rob, the fastest mile ever run, I Googled this, was 3 minutes and 43 seconds. So this guy is a little, 47 seconds slower, more or less,
Than the best mile.
best mile ever, but for about 2 hours.
Wow.
Which to me is ridiculous. I was trying to ask my girlfriend's a doctor. I'm trying to ask her, like, how is this physically possible? You know, like, I didn't think that they could run it that fast for that long, because he's essentially doing a sprint. Like, it's like I think it's 13.3 miles per hour. Most treadmills max out at 12. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's ridiculous, the pace that this guy had. But like you said, that guy obviously has a lot of genetics going from besides the hard work and dedication.
100%.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't want to diminish. You know, I think that some sports are more physically dominant and others are more intellectually dominant.
Correct. Yeah.
I think fighting is a very mindset, psychology, emotionally, charged sport, and sprinting is. Oh, I'm nervous before a race. I'm like, not the same as getting punched in the face. And other aspects of it too. Like, for example, heart. I think fighting requires a certain level of heart that swimming doesn't necessarily carry. I just don't. I think that's why I know we're biased here because we're all in the industry. Well, but I can't think of anything more.
But here, how to solidify your argument, right, or to back you up. If I said, okay, pick the prototype body to be a welterweight. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There is no prototype body. Yeah. There's guys like, well, that guy's tall and thin, and it lends to this style of fighting. Yeah. This guy's short and strong or pluggy, and this guy has great endurance. This guy doesn't have anything. He's just smart as shit. Like, there is no, like, I can grab every champion and be like, well, what do they have in common? You're like, physically? Not a lot. Nothing. You know what I mean? Like, whereas if I can go to football or soccer and pick out okay, if you're gonna have a striker or you're gonna have a running back, what's the prototype body?
A gymnast.
We have a prototype that we can sit there and go, okay, if you're gonna play linebacker in the NFL, you're probably not gonna be 5'9", 400 pounds. Like, that just does not exist. Because that does not lend itself to the athletic ability that you need to play that position. Right. We go to a football game and like, okay, all the linebackers stand over there, all the linemen go over there. They tend to all look the same. You're like, all right, well, the linemen seem to be built the same. You know what I mean? So there shows that the physical aspect of the sport has so much more weight and bearing on it than in fighting. Because again, like, I mean, even in boxing, which is more selective of what aspects of physically attributes are important. But I mean, like, what two boxers look the same? You can't sit there and go, okay, well, the perfect body style is a Pacquiao type. I'm like, well, what about Floyd's body style? Yeah. What about a guy who's long and loose, has great endurance, but no punching power?
And this ties into something you said earlier about in the animal kingdom. Like, why is it that we are the most dominant species on the planet? It's not because we're fastest, strongest, but it has to do, like, I mean, like, in certain environments, you would never outdo a lion or a bear. No. In the right environment, like, we're the king of the jungle, right? And in fighting, I really think that it is the best expression of the human ability to overcome, because you are able, through fighting, it's a combination of psychology, emotional control, physical ability, technique. And I have a hard time finding other skills or professions in life that are as complete as fighting, because you really get a little bit of everything, man.
Well, it's the most primal thing and necessary thing that we've had to do throughout history. I mean, to survive back in the day, it's fighting. Yeah. You're either fighting for position, you're hunting, you're killing things. So like, there's nothing more animal than being able to fight.
But I think it's also human at the same time.
Very
it's
human,
exceptionally human.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that separates it, like you said, from other sports as well, is that there's so many tactics that you can employ. Particularly with MMA, like, you can win in a myriad of ways. Yes. Whether kicks, punches, knees, elbows, submissions, chokes, takedowns. So, like, that's why, like you're saying, what's the ideal prototype? Well, it depends how you're going to win. Yeah. Like, you're a wrestler, you're short and stocky. You're a striker, John Jones, long and tall. And they've been shown all to work. Whereas when you have a sport that's simpler, like, let's say, like running, I mean, once you master the stride and having a good gait, there's not much else to it. It's just now physical performance. How much more can he squeak out of the body?
The other way I thought about it too, to explain that how much more mindset is involved. Battle of the sexes is probably, women's rights and feminism, the Me Too movement, and just, women being equal to men is probably, again, it's the forefront of everybody's conversation nowadays. I saw something the other day where Serena Williams, who one of the best female tennis players of all time, she warmed up with a guy who was 200th.
Yep, I remember this.
He murdered her. Yeah. It wasn't even close. Like, basically, they were shocked.
They
were shocked that she scored 1 point on the guy. Yeah. Like, they're like, that he gave up a point, I guess, was like, they're like, wow. And he's like, we don't even know his name. He's never going to be anybody. Yeah. Now, I thought about that for a second. Like, that shows you, even tennis, how physical attributes are really so much more important. if I grabbed right now the greatest female fighter, if I said, hey, Valentina Shevchenko, right, and I got the 200th ranked guy in her weight class to fight her,
The walk in the park.
right?
And it's not an insult. It's just, it is what it is.
But I actually think it'd be closer than this tennis match would be.
I think so.
I
The
think
tactics will
yeah.
be more important.
Yeah,
right?
I think.
Because the technical aspect will make up for that.
Yes,
You're right.
because there's so much more technique involved in our sport and strategy. I think she would have a closer gap than Serena had with. Because you're not competing purely physical with the guy now. Now, if the guy goes and lowers his head, I mean, hey, a guillotine's a guillotine. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? If I wrap your neck the right way, you know.
And that's tennis too, which is to me, like, it's not the best display of human athleticism. Like sprinting to me, is
Right.
like it's much, or powerlifting or gymnastics to me is like that is the ultimate.
Well,
when
it
comes
makes
to
you
human
wonder: is there really a difference
performance.
between a female and a male brain? Because people keep telling me that they're like, well, in our brains we're the same. I'm like, well, that makes no sense. A female, her genetic, if you believe in genetic evolution, right, biology, right, there's a reason why a man has developed the way he developed, because, you know, obviously through evolution, if a trait was beneficial, it survived and was, you know, well, you're telling me that the mindsets didn't change either? Like the priority for a female isn't there? And I was reading a book on nonverbal communication, right? Just on how to read people and talk. Just because, you know, you do business, 50% is not even what you're saying, but what, you know.
Yeah, how you're saying it.
How you're saying it, right? Like your physical, you know, expression. And it was saying how women, in fact, I read this like 10 years ago. And since that day, people sometimes think I'm funny because I bring my wife with me to almost any business meeting. Yeah. And as the guy's talking to me, because I'm shitty at reading people, and I never realized that my wife is really good at reading people. And then
Women are so much better at
but
that.
it was explained in the book. It said that, hey, men, we're not supposed to read people. We're off out in the woods hunting, gathering, or doing whatever the hell we're going to do. A woman is home with the infants or babies.
For most of our evolutionary history, that's
Right?
been the case, yeah.
And they can't talk. So if there was something wrong with that baby and it needed to communicate, the women that were better at reading what their child needed, obviously the child probably has those same genes and was able to pass them on because they survived. So it was saying something like, it's like, and I'm probably murdering the stat, but it was really a drastic difference. So basically, our brain has 3 to 5 different sections that is using to read people. A woman's brain's like 8 to 13 different parts. That's why they're better. All the time I'll sit there and like, we're having a conversation like, wow, I really like that guy. Like, hey, Jen, what'd you think? She goes, he's a scumbag. He'll rip you off.
And they're right 9 out of 10. Too.
No,
Yeah.
my wife's 100 for 100. So far, she's never been wrong. Like, there's times where I have fought with her. I'm like, you are absolutely wrong on this one. And then all of a sudden, like a month later, I'm like looking at my phone and going, fuck. God damn it, she's right again.
That's a good advice. Bring your wife with you to business.
Women are
meetings.
good at reading
They're
people.
really good at reading people. Intentions, body language,
But see, now,
everything.
now that's how I think that's the future. That's the right mindset to have. I don't think my wife's better than me. I don't think I'm better than her. We're just like, you know, it's like, we're a tribe. It's like a team sport, right?
Yeah.
Like, she has certain attributes that make her better at certain aspects of the game than mine. So guess what? We're a team. Hey, you know what? You're better at this than I am. You do it.
Yeah.
But there's a big bear in the backyard. I'm like, oh, okay, well, fuck.
I got a better chance of winning than you.
I got a better chance of winning this than you do. Let me grab the rifle. I like guns. I like to shoot shit. I'll go kill the bear.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit there and go, let me take care of the baby and you go kill the bear. You know what I mean? Like,
But we're living in a world where, like what you just said, but it's kind of like reality. Biological reality got flipped on its head, and it's supposed to be like, no, the woman should be able to kill the bear. I'm like, you know,
why? But I mean, going back again, like,
why swim upstream? You know?
Yeah. Why? It goes against my martial arts mind, where I'm like, I'm always looking for the easiest way to accomplish the most, right? How can I, you know, like if I'm using a wrench on a tire, I'll put a pipe on the outside of the wrench to extend my lever. Oh, I can use less strength, or I can use the same amount of strength and get that much more result out of it. So when people tell me, like, well, women are going to do this now, and men are going to do this, I'm like, that's just not as efficient, man.
Yeah,
like, why? Like, what? My part of my brain is going. If I was better at it, then I will do it. But if my wife's better at certain things than I am, then I'm like, well, will you do it? You know, my wife's much more organized than I am. She does the whole schedule. I guess I can sit there and I'm the man of the house. I'm going to make the schedule. It's going to be a shitty schedule compared to hers. You know what I mean? Like, she's so much more forethought behind everything.
I get some of it because, like I told you, my girlfriend's a doctor. She's a psychiatrist. So, you know, women being doctors is not really a common thing. It's starting to now, but like if you look back maybe like 100 years ago, women doing like highly skilled, educated professions was not as common, you know? So I get from an intellectual standpoint, where a lot of women feel like, oh, we were held back because of unfair biases.
I don't believe in denying opportunities, but
Yeah.
I do believe in evaluating people's performances 100%. Like,
Yeah.
I'm totally against there being two physical standards. It makes no sense to me. If you're a firefighter, and I deem that
Yeah.
for you to be a firefighter, you got to carry a 50-pound sack up 2 flights of stairs. I don't even know if that's a requirement, just using this example. You can't sit there and go, well, the woman has to only do 30.
Yeah, no, that's horseshit.
Why?
Yeah.
You're telling me in a life or death situation, is the hose she's going to grab lighter? Is there a female? Okay, well, it's a woman. We'll have a woman hose.
All to be politically correct.
All be
No,
politically
yeah,
correct.
I've had
into
experience with this in
nonsense,
a lot of ways too, because I worked at a nuclear power plant at one point, and I was a field operator, and you have to
That's an
carry.
interesting lifestyle.
Yeah, you have some crazy they call them like torque wrenches. They're like giant, like 50-pound wrench. And I remember there was a woman. There was like a bunch of Navy dudes. There was a bunch of guys, and there was like 2 girls that were really tiny, maybe like 100 pounds.
And the guys that they're doing that are probably physical work for them. Huh?
Well, no. The thing is, they're applying for the job, but it's like, can you carry this torque wrench by yourself? Because otherwise, you're a liability now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And likewise, in jobs that are very physically demanding, it's not realistic, right? So like, I think sometimes they've stretched. I think mentally, yes, men and women can be equal. Women can be better, right?
Yeah.
I think those type of biases are not good. I think the physical biases though are definitely real, right? We can't pretend they're not. Like when we say like, oh, a woman could do anything a man can do. Physically, it's like you're stretching the boundaries a bit. You know
Physically,
what I mean?
it's not a debate.
Look,
the mindset is harder to grasp because you can't measure in the same way you can measure power in
That's
athletic
why I think
ability.
you just put out a standard, and whoever, like, look, my daughter is a 1% of what females are capable of doing.
Yeah.
She's the pinnacle of what a female athlete, you know what I mean? Like, I go to the gym, I lift with her. She lifts as much as all the boys right now in her age group lift. She's one of the strongest girls in the gym. That's not going to continue to be the case as they enter puberty and testosterone fills their blood, right?
Yeah.
But if you put together a standard and go, okay, we got to do 8 pull-ups. Bella can do 8 pull-ups.
Yeah.
I don't think we should lower the standard. Are you going to get a lot less female applicants into certain positions? Yeah, it's just the way it is, Like, I'm sorry, but, like, there's a physical standard. There's some guys out there that can't do 8 pull-ups.
Yeah.
Should I feel bad that I'm discriminating? Or are you going to be like, well, go to the gym, figure it out,
Yeah.
No, I agree
Find
with
a way
you.
to, to lift. You're like, well, I was only born with one hand. I should have the same opportunity. I'm all, not for this type of position. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
I think
I'm not going to discriminate, but you got to figure out a way with one hand to do the pull-up.
Yeah, you got. I think what you're saying, performance evaluation is what should be
Yeah, it should
determined
be a
based on
standard.
what job you should do, not because everybody should get the same.
Well, that's truly the Me
yeah.
Too movement. If you want to be equal 100%, but then at the same time on the backside take an easy route, it's like, well, do you want it to be equal or not? Do you want to be on the same playing field, or do you want a handicap?
Otherwise, you're discriminating backwards. You're changing the standard by creating privilege, essentially. Oh, I only have to do 5 pull-ups, not 8.
Well,
you're doing exactly the opposite of what you claim to be doing by fighting for equal rights. You're changing the rights. You're by changing the expectations.
Yeah, like I'm
it's
very
like
pro police officer, but I don't agree. Like I feel like the standard should be out there for a female, should be the same for a male. Are there women out there that could kick ass?
Absolutely.
There's a few out there. I'm not saying there's not, but out of the majority, just like there's certain. Are there guys out there who are pale who can run at under a 10-second 100 meters? Yeah, there's not as many that are from Jamaican ancestry though. Or they tend to be faster sprinters. I'm not being a bigot or a racist by pointing out that certain physical attributes seem to come from certain cultures or certain makeup.
Yeah.
Then that's fine. You know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. But trying to sit there and make up rules to fight it, to me, just throws the system on its head.
Biology can't be biased. The truth can't be biased. Like if it's something if it is scientifically backed up, you're angry at the facts and you're shooting the messenger. Why? I mean, you can if you want. It's a free country, and I think that people ought to express themselves. But like you're in denial of the facts.
Yeah.
And it's just. I think when it comes to physical and athletic ability, it's so easy to demonstrate this. It's not even a debate.
Well, what
when
about
it comes
the
to
mental?
psychological side, it's more complex. But there's a lot more malleability when it comes to human.
But
psyche.
even that, and when it comes to combat, I don't think the average woman has even the right mindset for it. If you think about it, like look at chess.
Yeah.
Chess there's no physical expression whatsoever. You can be, Hawkins in a chair, and play chess, right?
It's mind, yeah.
It's totally the most mental version of combat I can think of.
Yes.
It's a male owned sport.
Yeah.
I don't know of a single female world champion.
They have one that beat Kasparov, but it's like she's the exception to the rule.
The
But they
Indian
have,
girl, right?
yeah, well, yeah, I can't remember. No, she's European, I think, but I think she's beaten Kasparov before. But it is the exception.
So, and
to
it
the
does.
rule.
It happens. Just
But
like
it's exceptional.
I always
Yeah.
say, like, there are other Bellas in the world.
Yeah.
You know, my daughter, right?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but she is far and few
Well,
between.
Well,
you
they
know?
have male and female categories in chess, so I think men are more strategical when it comes to these things. In
Well,
general, not as
because-
a rule, because you got to be careful when you say this, because you're going to find the one woman who proves you
Well-
wrong. Like, we're talking about patterns and average here. We're not
just
talking
like-
about single cases.
If you go into most men's household, the ability to raise children, right? That maternal, I take care of a child. Women tend to get to it a lot easier than most men. Now, not that I can't find a guy out there that's Mr. Mom of the Year and the most amazing guy, but on average, if I grab 100 random dudes and 100 random girls, I go, okay, make sure this child lives until next week.
Women are going to be better.
The women are better at it. They're like, well, did you feed him? You're like, oh, fuck, he eats food. Guys will be in the back like, dude, cut the power so the PlayStation turns off, man. Fuck.
I think it's like I feel like you're describing every relationship on the planet. It's exactly, we're so like mindless when it comes to
Yeah.
stuff. That to me, it's like, well, yeah, to eat, like, yeah, you forget it. You don't think about it, man. Like, you're busy living in your little world. And
I'm so bad at communicating. I just got yelled at for coming here, right? I jumped out of bed when I saw the text, right? I was like, oh, fuck. And my wife said, what are you doing? I'm like, I got to go real quick. I told Robin to meet him at noon. She's like, why didn't you tell me first? I'm like, because I was talking to him, I didn't think about it. I'll take a picture when I get there. I'm not up to no good. I just forgot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, whereas Jennifer, like, I could tell you, like, okay, I know we're going to the pumpkin patch later today at 6 o'clock, and I know who's going to be there because of her. You know,
Yeah.
her organizational skills of
oh, 100%.
yeah,
100%
man. It's like,
agree.
Yeah, I think like just wrapping that up, everything I think should be judged based on the performance.
Performance.
Yes.
Not
I
on
agree.
any other metric. Not like what your skin
100%.
color is, male, female, whatever, where you come from. That doesn't matter. If you could do the job, we want you, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't care like you know, I have my own business and whatnot. I don't care what the person like looks like or what they believe in. If they know how to do the job well, I
both
want
you
that
guys own
person.
businesses, right? Here's the one stereotype or one thing that I personally call bullshit on, right? Man, I'm gonna come off such as a misogynist asshole on this show. I love my daughter, I swear to God.
And you're a great dad, by the way. I know Frank personally. He's an outstanding father.
Right, when people sit there and go, women only make 77 cents on the dollar of what a man makes doing the same exact job. And I sit there and go, that's not fucking possible. Because business owners ship jobs overseas to save fucking money.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you right now, like, hey, you could hire me for $10 an hour, or you can hire my daughter for $7.70 for a dollar.
Always, yeah.
Who are you gonna hire as the business owner? You mean you're going to be so pro-man that you want to pay somebody 30% more just so you can say you put a man in that position?
That's nonsense.
It's nonsense.
It's from a business perspective, it doesn't even make sense.
If you were a business owner and you had a group of people that you could pay a third less, you're hiring all those people.
Yeah,
You know? Especially when it's like,
and Americans are fiercely patriotic, and our jobs are where? In China, like our biggest competitor. Like, we know China's our biggest competition on the global stage. Everyone knows this, right? They're about to do the U.S. in terms of the size of the economy. They're a few years away
Look
from
how much
doing
control
it.
they have right now.
And we sent all those jobs over to China. That's how little
I think
American
there's been a
business
puckering
cares.
factor right now because look at the NBA. Look at right now Blizzard. I don't know if you
Yeah,
pay attention,
yeah,
right?
I saw that.
Okay, Blizzard has a partial ownership of Chinese company, I think Tensho or whatever. Anyways, one of their players said something against in support of the Hong Kong protests, right? He has a 12-month ban. He can't play his sport. Could you imagine right now if you had a jiu-jitsu competitor who came out and said, hey, I'm pro Hong Kong or pro China, whatever, but then because the company, the jiu-jitsu tournament, or the IBJJFF or F says, dude, he's suspended for 12 months. That would show there's a huge influence that this China would have over you. And you're seeing it in the NBA. One of their coaches said something, and the NBA, they don't want to get a civil rights lawsuit, so they're not going to do anything to him. But they've had to like apologize, cut games because China, NBA. Same thing with if you look at Disney, if you look at how much money movies make in China, our whole Hollywood, everybody's bending over backwards to the Chinese to not offend them. It's like, well, hold on, it's a communist country, guys.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to have free speech over there. And now because we have business ties with them, we're not allowed to have free
You
speech
see
either.
American capitalism bending over to the size of the demographics and the
Yes.
population in China.
I never saw
which
that
impacts
equation.
their business.
Yeah.
Disney's business is severely impacted by what China.
Well, it showed. I mean, it was a good chunk of money. I mean, I forgot what movie they used as the example that basically made like 900 million here. It made like 650 million over in China. So you're talking. It isn't like a drop in the bucket.
Portion of their market. Yeah.
But now all of a sudden they're allowing China to dictate their speech.
So,
freedom.
long story short, business decisions are based off of finances, not off of politics and political. Like people, political correctness plays a role there. But like, if you're a businessman, you're hiring based off of performance.
Exactly.
That's what I mean. I own a business. I prefer to hire women because I think they're more organized. Most of my employees, they are more organized, 100%. You know, but do I put a chick to teach class in front of a bunch of men? I think that rarely works. I've seen it work. We have one of our schools in Mexico.
Do you know what I think?
She teaches in front of a bunch of guys, and it works. She's a good leader. But it's the exception. Like, again, we're talking what? Average. You got to stick to that.
Whenever I watch James Bond, that's one movie where I call total bullshit on. If James Bond is real, if we have a super agent, super spies in the world, they're all female. They're not males. Because if I have to send someone in, men are dumb when it comes to pussy. We can't see that coming from. It's like, hey, that's dangerous. You're like, well, I don't know, but she's kind of hot. Like, it's funny. I teach this to my children. Cage, right? Yeah. Cage just turned 14, and he kind of has this girl he likes, and he's been kind of making, you know, like, well, I don't want to go here, I'd rather go here, and so he can see her. Yeah. So he's making choices based off it, and I get it, and I told him. But I said, hey, Cage, if you want to be, you know, I'm always trying to tell my kids how to be better than me. Yeah. Like, here's what I've achieved in life. Please let that just be the bar you want to jump over. Like, I don't want, you're not allowed to accomplish less than me. You know what I mean? It's either the same or more, or I failed as a father. And I tell Cage, you want to know, like, if you want to know right now your greatest weakness, it's your penis. It's because you're a man. It's your greatest weakness.
Especially at that age, he's just starting to get everything in. Yeah.
Trump had that one secretary that was helping him, and she's giving information out to the people. It's because she was cute. She worked for 2 years under him, for a year and a half. It was because she was hot. And here she had like no ability to keep her fucking mouth shut in a bar, you know, and spilling out information. And he had news, you know, people were telling him, hey, she's a fuck up. Because she was hot, he allowed her to stay. But then on the flip side, I tell that to Bella. I'm like, so Bella, I'm like, do you see now your brother's greatest weakness? She goes, yeah. I'm like, so I told Cage, what is it? He goes, my penis. Right? I'm like, so Bella, what is a man's greatest weakness? You know, so for Bella to become, I know this sounds diabolical, I guess, but I'm teaching my children how to be manipulative in the future and how to take advantage of people if they need to.
Survive in the jungle.
Yeah, because they're going to fucking screw you over. If you find a good person, great. You found a good person. But until you know they're a good person, let's just treat them like we don't know yet.
Keep your guard up.
Keep our guard up. And so Bella learning, like, Bella, you can manipulate. I see the richest, most, you know, intact businessmen totally blown over by women.
And especially like Bella's such a sweetheart too. I don't feel like people when they're too kind,
Bella's extremely kind.
Yeah, so you have to really like, hey, keep your hands up. Yeah. I tell my daughters the same thing.
Bella is completely going to have to be in Cage too. Ronan, I think, is a little bit more savvy because he's, you know, the baby of the family. But those two kids, like, yeah, like someone can come over and take advantage of them because my children aren't around animosity or anger or, you know, just people that are unhappy with their life. I mean, I've ended friendships with people because their children are the same age as mine and they have a shitty household, and I can sit there and go, I don't want your kids around my kids.
You know, it's a bad influence.
I feel the exact same way.
You know what I mean? Like, your children are not like my children. I kiss and love on my kids. Your kids need a hug. You know what I mean? And they're angry, and they're going to take it out on my kids, and I don't want that, you know? So, no, we'll separate. You know?
Well, that's your job as a parent, too, is precisely to guide and guard your children until they're old enough to do that for themselves, right?
Yeah.
It's the ultimate job. Frank, just switching gears a little bit. I want to, like, what is it, going back to your... Just, I think it's like I really want to, because like I know we've had this discussion in private many times, but I like to have it, you know, for our listeners. How do you feel like? What is your mindset walking into fights? Like, what is emotionally? How do you deal with it? Because this is something that competitors and fighters deal with, and I feel that you've always dealt with it exceptionally well. But I know that you're human too. You know, you've always because we're friends, you've always shown your human side to me as well. You know, have no like, hey, I'm a super tough guy. I'm always, I'm never nervous or scared or anything like that. Would you mind talking about your weaknesses and strengths when it comes to preparing?
It's funny because I tell people this all the time, especially dealing with fear. I am very much of a pussy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like pain. I'm not the kind of guy that sits there, oh, we're gonna do this. I'm like, that bugs me. I don't want to do that. Like, that's why actually I learned how to fight, because I'm like, oh, I want to control myself, my own mind, and learn how to leverage my ability to the best of, everybody goes, torturing. I'm like, everybody has a breaking limit. Some people more than others. And so martial arts to me is a way of me controlling my mind. And really it's simple as this. I just try not to project too far into the future. When I'm backstage in a locker room, I try not to, and I say I try not to because I still do. I'm like, oh, what if I lose? What if I win? But those are thoughts when they enter my mind that stress me the fuck out. They do. My heart rate jacks up. I'm sitting there going, oh shit,
Cortisol goes through the roof.
Yeah, so then I feel like I'm heavy, my legs filled with lead. I'm like, oh my God. So what I do is I just try to avoid that. I'm like, all right, when we come out and touch hands, what do I know most likely my opponent's going to do? I'm like, all right, well, he's going to start moving around. He likes to move to his right to set up his right hand. Okay. And then what are the 3 most common things he does from there? Well, if I give him an aggressive stimulation, he's going to fire off this. If I give him a neutral stimulation, he's going to do this. If I start moving away from him, this is what he's going to do. And I just start making it a math equation. X, Y, Z. It's all right, if you do this, I'm going to do this. And I get lost in that because to me it's positive way to control my mind, because it can't, when people say empty your mind, I'm like, it's impossible. I can only fill my mind with something else.
Yeah.
So I fill it with positive thoughts that are helping me. So now I'm using visualization on, okay, the guy shoots on me. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to turn the corner, hit a wizard, put pressure on the head. If he pops up from that, I'm going to bring my inside leg over, and maybe I'll grab the neck. If I feel like he's going to cross over my guard, then I'm going to post and neck push. You know what I mean? Like I have a series of things I'm going to run through, and that's what I'm going to fill my mind with. Not fill my mind with, what if I lose? What if I win? Because I really can't control that. And that's what I notice makes me the most stressful. So when I zoom off into my 1,000-yard stare, that's where I'm at. That's me just breaking down like, okay, I'm fighting Roy. When he sets his feet, I know the overhand right's coming, or possibly 20% of the time it's going to be an uppercut. Either way, it's going to be on these lines. I know which line I have to go to. And then immediately when I'm in that line, what power do I have? Well, my left hand will be charged. I can have a straight left or an uppercut, depending on where his head is. Okay, so now as I'm slipping the right hand, I'm looking to see how far down his head goes. Is it uppercut time or is it a straight left time? And that's how I feel my brain.
And here's my next, because I knew you were going to go in this direction. This is where I wanted to have this discussion with you. To what ability? Because some people seem to really struggle. We spoke to, me and Dave spoke about this. We spoke about this in private before. Mike Musumez, he said the exact same thing, is this ability to, because you can't get rid of it.
No.
What you can do is, focus on the mission.
Yep.
How do you feel do you think some people have a harder time than others, or is this just something we're all equal on and some people just need more practice, or something really, maybe they have a predisposition to allow their emotions and fear, doubt, and anxiety to take over control over their thoughts, and they just have this inability to switch that off and let's focus on the mission?
Well, I think that if everybody's attached to it, it makes everybody nervous. And I really feel like the only solution is to, as you said, what was the word expression?
Predisposition?
No, the mission.
You focus on the mission.
Focus on the mission. I like that. I'm going to use that phrasing from now on. Because a lot of people, and this is what I used to do too, I used to be so overwhelmed by the emotions of walking out in front of thousands of people, winning and losing, this is the end of the world, what could happen, that I actually did the worst thing possible, which is I became unattached. So that's why people say that you watch me walk out to a cage, I almost looked like I was turned off. I was turned off. I was completely I don't care if I win or lose, it doesn't matter. Almost like a Nietzsche type, look, we're all fucking walking corpses anyways, what does it really matter? You know what I mean? And so I became unattached, which then that doesn't drive you, doesn't focus you, doesn't give you a reason for succeeding and trying to storm. You're basically becoming a reactionary individual, okay, as the situation comes, I'll deal with it. And that does sometimes work, as being a reactionary, but I think it's always a huge improvement, or much more preferable to be proactive and fill my mind with positive things. And then the other reason why I found that it was so useful is that I became really proficient at doing maneuvers. I've been in the back locker room and guys have shown me, do this. And I've looked at it and pulled it off in the fight. And people are like, how the hell do you do that? I'm like, Well, I thought about it probably about 10,000 times in that 2-hour period that I had.
And I remember when you fought Nogueira for the first time, and you dropped him with that lead, that up jab. What do you call that funny jab? The up jab.
Long uppercut.
And you learned it, 2 weeks before the fight? And someone showed it to you. I remember someone showing you that combo, and you really liked it. And I know you didn't drill it because I was part of the camp. You barely drilled it at all. Yeah. But I know that in your head, you went over that move a million times when the situation presented itself. Yep. And that's why you were able to do it.
And that's because you can go into... Your wife could tell you the psychology. Yeah. My brain, when you visualize something and you run it through, and then you have a memory of actually doing something, your brain really has a hard time of telling the difference between did you create that image or did you actually do that? Yeah. And so I'm like, I take it. Well,
the neural pathway was created.
So I take advantage of setting up that neural pathway, and the more times I can fire that signal off, because when I learned really early on, okay, the synapses between two axons, right, that neural pathway, what makes it stronger? Well, the more times it fires. Well, my physical attributes are finite. I can only throw a straight left or that right uppercut. How many times can I drill it before my shoulder's on fire, my hips are burning? Not that you don't physically drill it, but I can drill it in my brain. I can sit there and drive in a car, and I pull over, and my wife always says it to me. She only recently pointed that out to me. I don't talk in the car. She goes, you know how off-standing it seems to be in a car with you? I'm like,
drilling.
I'm drilling in my head constantly. All kinds of shit. Like, okay, I get rammed by a car, 2 guys get out with guns. What do I do? And then I have scenarios and I'm just constantly running through my head. Okay, the kids are with me, the kids aren't with me. I have access to this gun, I don't have access to this gun. You know what I mean? Like I'm constantly drilling in my brain.
I'm not the only one. I don't drive with music in the car.
I don't either.
Yeah, it's always silent. And everybody's like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, no man, I'm thinking.
This
is my thinking.
I get lost in my thoughts. Yeah. So I notice my kids are the same people now. They sit in the car like this and just, a couple times I've been like, say, how was school? They're like, good. I'm like, all right, good. I'm like, shit, we're having I mean, not that they don't come to me and have great conversations, but I can see too, they're just meditating. Lost. Yeah, they're in their own head too, because they're mimicking me. It just constantly there's fuck, man. I tell my wife that. She goes, are you okay? Everything wrong? I'm like, yeah, why? I'm like, man, there's a fucking party going on in my head, dude. Yeah. Like,
and there's a lot of noise. And I daydream. People that know me make fun of me all the time because I cannot meditate like that, what we're describing, and not make facial expressions. And talk, I move my mouth.
Oh God, I do it too!
And I'm starting full-on conversation.
My wife will ask me, she goes, what were you just thinking about right now? I'm like, why? It's just your nose like snarled up, you know?
Yeah. I literally sometimes I'll make facial expressions of what's going on.
I do the same thing.
Yeah, it's an expression what's going inside my head, and I get angry. I used to not care when people interrupted me. Now I'm like, shut the fuck up. I'm in my zone here, man. Like, don't. It's like you're really focused on something, and they want to pull you out of your zone. I'm like, no, man. Leave me in my zone. I'm happy here.
So you must do this too, because I do this all the time. I'm the worst person to drive with. Like, you have to be on me while you're driving. Or I drive around in Vegas, even like to come to your house right now. I know where you live. I have to set my directions. Yeah. Because otherwise, I'll pass the exit and just keep on going. I've driven places where I'm like, where the fuck am I? You know what I mean? Like, oh my God! Like, I'll come back to reality.
You should take that as a compliment. Like, great minds, it's a feature of great minds. It really is. People get so distracted. Like, Adam Smith he was known for walking for hours on end, and then like not knowing where he was when he stopped walking. Yeah. Because he was thinking economics. He was out of it, just walking, and then he'd come back, get home, and write down his thoughts.
Yeah.
You know, and I think some of the best ideas and the best moments I've had with myself were completely by myself, living inside my own head. Yeah. I'm so happy in there. So people pull me out of that, I'm almost like angry. I'm like, why did you pull me out of Disneyland, man? Because in my head, it's like the happiest place in the world. You know?
Yeah, it just goes, we talked about the other day, visualization, the power of it. And obviously, you're doing a lot of it. And it's just so big. Like, I don't know anybody who's achieved great things without seeing it here first, you know? Yeah. And it's exactly what
100%,
I think what you said was the really drives the point home, whereas physically you can only do something so many times. Yeah. Mentally, like you said, it's infinite. It's just it depends on your patience. Like how much time are you willing to dedicate to practicing that in your head? A lot of people are lazy, or they just don't see the value in it, and they don't put the time, and it shows, you know, because then they can't perform the same way that they do in a more stressful situation because they haven't lived it enough.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. The only time that I feel that like it's very important for me to physically drill something is if I can't feel it in my head. You know what I mean? Like there's certain, I can sit there and talk about grabbing a guillotine while I'm in their half guard. I can feel being there. I can feel them shifting my weight over. I can feel them fighting my leg down. But like, there's certain like, for me to butterfly sweep someone into that 411.
Yeah.
You showed it the other day. I can't feel it in my brain. Like I can't really. I'm like sitting there going, you know
can't
what?
see it.
I can't feel it. Now I've repped it a couple times, but still haven't repped it enough that I can feel it in my head. So my development on that move has been fucking at 1%.
So funny.
Whereas my reverse guillotine, my development to switch off to a Darce, my timing's increased. I've only had to do it a couple times, but in my brain, I'm constantly doing this. When I feel a guy push my hips away, I know his arm is. I can feel your elbow getting closer to your head as you're trying to defend the guillotine. And now my arm's shooting across for the Darce. I can feel my hand on my bicep, even without me being there.
Yeah.
Whereas certain moves I can't feel.
It's so funny you say that because it's exactly how I've always felt. Like there are moves that came to me. If I have a criteria, if I can close my eyes and I can see myself in the whole sequence, I'm going to be good at that move.
Yeah.
There's certain things I cannot see myself doing. Like I cannot see myself pulling off a hip throw. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 22 years. I've never thrown anyone off my hip, ever. If I close my eyes and I try to see myself doing a hip throw, I cannot make that connection. And as a result, I suck at them. But like a guillotine and a Darce,
my brain knows my own limitations.
I never drilled them a day of my life. Not once did I drill a guillotine. And it's just like, it just came to me naturally.
Like even things that I physically could teach somebody and I could run it through, but my brain, as I'm doing it, there's like an alarm that goes, boop, doesn't work. For me, for example, because of the thickness of my legs and my abs, I have a hard time. If I have an overhook and wrist control, me pushing your wrist up and pulling a triangle, it ain't happening. I can't get my if I can get you, you suck at jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? Because it isn't a smooth transition. It's going to take me like 30 seconds of fighting to get my foot over your shoulder to get between that crack. So even when I sit here and visualize it, I go, boom, I'm like, I can't do that move. My body knows that you're not going to pull that off. It ain't happening, dude. You know what I mean?
That's crazy how that is because I have these mental blocks, man. Like I don't know if there's.
I think it's because our brain knows.
And I've tried to fix them. For the longest time in striking, I couldn't see a right hand landing. I cannot visualize my right hand landing on the guy's head. I could just, in practice, I never did. I could land a hook, I could land, but the right hand for some reason was never a punch. Even on the pads, I could crack the pads on with it, but like when it comes to sparring, like I have this block, like it doesn't.
And then your brain won't do it because it doesn't have like a pathway to follow.
Yeah.
It's like the schematics of movement aren't even in there.
Yeah.
It's like go. It's like
there's something missing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of like plays to what your game is, right? Because if you don't believe what you can do in here, like you said, it doesn't translate outside. So like, I think that mental work is so important because you have to be able to do it physically enough where it can be accepted and something that you imagine. And I love the way you're describing how you visualize it because you're feeling it. You can see it. You can actually physically feel it in yourself.
Yeah.
And you go and like I always tell people, like visualizations have to be very vivid.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like you said, I call them false memories because, like you said, like sometimes you don't even know if it actually happened. Right. It's like, did it actually happen or did I imagine it? It doesn't matter. When if you're able to do that, now it's like you actually had the experience without actually doing it physically.
Believable.
No.
And it gives you like you only fight like a guy who's a veteran fighter has like 30 something fights. That's a lot of fights, and it takes years to do that. But you could have 30 fights in a day, in your head, and get that same experience. But you have to be able to get the feel. You have to get the smell, the height.
Because I think they have different levels of how deep into your mind you can go. Because sometimes I can they're very superficially, and I'm normally someone interrupts me or something happens, right? But if I can be in my zone, the longest I can be in there, like I feel the deeper I can go into thoughts, the more realistic it becomes. Like I've been on like certain situations where like I'm on the verge of tears because I'm celebrating the title. Like I'm so emotionally involved. I'm actually celebrating in my head something that's entirely but it's so vivid in my mind.
Yeah, no, I get emotional reactions.
Like I'm like, man, this is like I just won a world title.
And that's how you know you're doing a good job of it, right? Yeah. When your heart rate starts to move faster as you start seeing the fight going through. Yeah. Your subconscious is accepting it. It's like believable. Like this is happening. You know what I mean? If you can see a visualization and it doesn't excite you, it's not working.
No.
You're not connecting. Something's not believable where your mind's like, no.
Yeah, it's not giving you an emotional response.
Yeah,
it's got to be emotional. You're right.
Have you guys ever done flotation tanks?
Yes.
No, I want to.
You have done it?
Yes.
Yeah, it gets pretty intense after it. Like you're sitting in a tank. I don't know if you're
I've read about it.
Yeah, like for people who don't know, it's like you're sitting in a tank that's isolated of all senses. The water is lukewarm, so it feels just like your skin, so you don't feel anything. There's no sound. There's pitch black. There's no smell. So all your senses are shut off. So it allows you just essentially you're sitting in a giant consciousness tank.
Yeah.
And the idea is to do like meditation. And when you go in there, like when I did it, like they had a guy tell you, do a guided meditation, go through this.
I heard your injuries also kind of go away while you're in there. Like you can't feel them.
You don't feel anything because you're floating because it's a very high saline water. So you just float. You don't feel anything. You don't move. But like, once you start thinking and you go into these rabbit holes where you're like just flying through things, and then at a certain point you start getting anxious depending on where you're, because you're just sitting alone for so long, you know. Like, so it's interesting. It's only like an hour, you know, but like it feels like a really long
track
hour.
of time.
Rogan and them do that. Don't I think they smoke DMT first, or
like Rogan, I think, maybe popularized it because like this thing it wasn't invented in the 1930s, 40s, whatever it was, but no one spoke about it for decades, and I think Rogan got into it through like because he's big onto psychedelics and all that stuff. And I would imagine what it'd be like, because I wasn't on anything when I did the float tank, but I imagine if you did that high,
you would be.
I'd have to do it sober the first
or
time.
DMT, whatever. Man, I can't even imagine how deep the rabbit hole you would go.
Fly through another dimension.
Yeah, man, wake up in a different dimension,
right?
Yeah.
There was a movie about that where a guy was doing where basically like it was like it ended up being a horror movie. The guy went into the flotation tank and stuff, like it was a sensory deprivation.
Okay.
And somehow like it reverted him back to like caveman type, like Neanderthal, and like he was like, what was the name of the movie? It was a popular actor that played in it.
I don't know.
I'll think of it.
We'll have to Google it later. Well, yeah, if you guys know what we're talking about, then text me direct message because I want to watch this now.
Yeah, he ended up going like, you know, like it became like a Jekyll and Hyde thing almost, where you know he would revert to this animalistic caveman version of humanity that was him, and then you know show him ripping open the tank, or it was crazy. So that'll be the thought. I'll probably goes through my mind. I'm sitting there like, oh no!
That's hilarious.
Funny, man. But Frank, is there anything else you want to?
Nah, man, I think we kind of touched on everything a little bit.
It's a fun conversation, man. Like,
we gotta do it again, man. It was cool.
We will do it again, I'm sure, at some point. Like it's
Well,
here in
and also all
Vegas.
four of us come on mind. Phonebooth fighting.
Absolutely.
Because Richard will add in some good influence on.
100%.
Why didn't you plug that in there while you're at it?
Yeah. Phonebooth fighting. You can listen to me on Stitcher Radio or on Apple iTunes. You can do the download. Richard Hunter and I, and hopefully here soon we'll have you guys on there.
Been on there once.
Yeah,
it was fun. I'll do it again for sure.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Frank.
Thank you so much, Frank, for having us. I hope you guys enjoyed. Guys, if you enjoy the podcast, hopefully you did. Share it with your friends. Give us some feedback too. I really like positive and negative feedback, I guess. Like if there's something we got to work on, let us know. Like we want to make this the most entertaining show possible for all you guys. So this is really targeting the martial arts audience, but hopefully not just the martial arts audience, because I think we go into conversations that I think apply to all levels of life.
Like Frank was saying, to me, the martial arts is about controlling your mind, right? And that's something that everybody can benefit from. And I think that's the most beneficial part of the martial arts, is that it translates outside the sport. Like at a certain point, your time's done in the sport, and then you don't want to be like, well, that's useless now. Like I want to be able to carry that with me from everywhere else, and I feel the martial arts definitely does that.
I'm a proponent of that. That's why when people come to me, the biggest argument I have with people on the road is like, oh, I would like to do that, but I don't want to fight. I'm like, you don't want to train martial arts so you don't want to fight? That's like saying that I don't want to learn about music because I don't want to be in a rock band.
Yeah.
Okay. Like you could still appreciate martial arts and use it to train you and not make money and make a living.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Aristotle said a complete man should study, work, and fight. It's part of your education. I lean towards that because it teaches you so much about yourself. Like I don't think people that don't ever step foot in the gym to train and get to know combat on a very deep level, they're fulfilling their whole nature. There's like certain aspects about yourself that are calling for that.
Yeah, you're missing a part of the experience.
A huge part of your human experience if you never experience. You don't have to fight professionally, but experiencing combat.
Yeah.
Having someone trying to beat you it's almost like looking in a mirror in a lot of ways.
Well, that's why I tell everybody, like, look, our emotions are what they are. They can't be created nor destroyed. Like our urge to want to eat food, there's a biological incentive to want to acquire calories. Now, obviously, in our society, it's kind of haywire because it's so readily accessible. Now we have obesity, right? Being violent is I always tell people we are the descendants of people. All of us here.
Yep.
You had to consume calories, fight, and breed. If you didn't do that, I always call it the 3 Fs. You can figure out which one's if you don't have that hardwired into your brain, you wouldn't be here, right? And if you watch, anytime you suppress something in a negative way, it always backfires. Look at breeding, right? Our sexuality. The Catholic Church tells men that you're not supposed to get married, not supposed to be with a woman, nothing. So now all of a sudden, like now they have this explosion of pedophilia going through. I'm like, well, that's because you tried to subvert Now, there's a good way to take it. Like, okay, well, what if you're married with a woman and you got or a monogamous relationship? Like, oh yeah, sex is good now. Yeah. But you can't. So I'm not saying go out and go get AIDS and have sex with everybody you see.
But you can't suppress it.
You can't suppress it. So I think violence is the same thing. Martial arts is a controlled violence. Learning how to control it. It's much healthier. Yeah. If the Columbine kids had a martial arts, if they were purple belts in jiu-jitsu,
I think they wouldn't have done that.
100% no, they wouldn't have done that. Well, and they probably just would have choked a kid out or two at school. They would have had self-confidence, but it wouldn't have been such an zero violence until I went, oh, screw it, I'm going to get a gun and go to school. It's
all these primal urges have to be expressed.
Yes.
Right? If they're not expressed...
There's a healthy way to do it and an unhealthy way to do it.
Well, as Nietzsche would say something along the lines of, you have to become who you are. Society tries to steer you away from who you really are, what your nature is, and like we have to find that nature, whatever it is, because we're not identical, we're all slightly different, but you have to embrace that, and then that's how you fully express yourself in your full capacity. And I agree with you guys. I think fighting is an expression of this nature.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I think we can do a delayed close.
That was it's then the close there, but. Well, we had a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Frank.
Yeah, man,
I really appreciate it, man. And once again, guys, hopefully you guys enjoyed, share, and we'll see you guys next time.